Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. I am Andrew Burkham, and I am the founder and CEO of the Idea Training Academy. We are a coaching and consulting firm that helps stuck people get unstuck. So if you are a high capacity person, and by the way, you are a high capacity person, you have the ability to do just about anything you want to do. But if you're stuck, if you find yourself in a place where you don't know how to get to the next step, that's where we come in. And so that's what we're going to do today. Welcome in. Welcome in. Ateratex, thank you for the subscription for the 24 months. Happy 24 months, my friend. Welcome in. How is everybody? Now, guys, today we're doing something a little bit different. I've got the live stream here, of course, on Twitch, just like I always do. I have it on YouTube as well, so you can go over to youtube.com/@Andrew Burkham. And it's also up on Facebook today. So I don't know if anybody is going to watch this on Facebook, but I decided, hey, let's go ahead and put it up and see what happens. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's get into it today. Today, I want to talk about, have you ever had that moment where you just kind of knew that you had missed the boat? That you had just done the wrong thing? Let me tell you this story. So this happened this last winter, and my family and I were going over to my mom and dad's house. Now, my mom and dad live just up the street from us here. They live in a beautiful senior community it's gated, and it's got all the houses. Everything's nice. And they've got great neighbors, and it's a fun place. We go there a lot on Sunday afternoons so we can hang out with mom and dad. But this particular day, as we're driving, all of a sudden, the heavens opened up. And it is raining. I mean, it was raining cats and dogs. Literal, just 4 or 5 blocks from my house. And I couldn't see because there was so much water on the windshield of the car. And then as we get there, as we're pulling in, to make matters worse, it actually starts to hail. So now it's got ice pouring out of the sky. I've got my 2 kids and my wife in the car, and here we are. And so I'm like getting them out of the car and telling them, go inside. I had some stuff that I had to bring in. So I had some stuff in the back of the car. So I got into the back of the car, and I got it, and I was trying to protect myself and shield myself. And here I go. I've got this armful of stuff, and I go up onto their porch, and the door is partway open. And so, I'm like, okay, well, cool. Let's go in. And I start to push the door open, and I'm met with resistance. There's somebody standing in the door, and I'm thinking, it's one of my kids. One of my kids is standing in the doorway. And so I'm pushing against this, like, hey, I'm here. Let me in. And still, I'm getting resistance. And so I push again, and somebody is now pushing back against me. And so now I'm furious with my children, because I'm sure that one of them is messing with me. Here I'm standing in the rain and the hail, and they're just messing around with me. And so finally I just give a huge push, and the door swings open, and there, instead of my kids that I'm about to yell at, is my parents' neighbor, who is very upset with me because I have just broken into his house, and he has no idea who I am. Isn't that the way life works sometimes, though? Sometimes we get to a place where we think that the point is to get out of the rain and out of the weather like that. But the problem is not the weather at all. The problem is that we are at the wrong door. So I've been thinking about this a lot this week, and I've been thinking about what I do, how I help people out. And a big thing that I do for people is I help them try and figure out what the problems are that they need to solve in their lives. And hi, Tal, I see you over on the YouTube side. And what I find a lot of times is that people are trying to solve the wrong problems. And so how do we help them? How do we help them figure out what the right problem is? Or this week, what I've been thinking about is, how do we figure out why we're solving the wrong problem? Because I think that most of us are working so hard to escape discomfort that we don't realize that we're pushing on the wrong door, that we're breaking into the neighbor's house. And you probably know this feeling, right? You've been to a place where you've done really good work. you've pushed yourself, you've really extended yourself out. You know all the Angela Duckworth stuff, you know grit, and you've got perseverance, and you've got the ability to build disciplines. But now you're stuck again, and you you find yourself exhausted, and you think that you're lazy. I thought this way about myself for a lot of my life. I would get to a place where I was completely exhausted, completely burned out, and I would blame myself for being lazy. But what I started to realize is that I wasn't lazy. I was doing the wrong thing in the wrong way. And yes, I'm not sure that breaking and entering is always the answer. I read some research this morning from University College London that they published in a very important journal that's the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences. And the long and the short of this research was that the harder a decision is, the more likely we are to just simply do nothing about it. Our brains are literally wired to prefer the status quo when things get complicated. But what if the real issue that we're facing is not that we're solving the wrong problem, but that we've gotten comfortable with having a problem? And that's the turn that I made this week, because problems have a tendency, they get familiar. They sometimes they'll give us our identity. Have you ever been to a place where you find yourself identified by a problem? Maybe it's something at work where you're the one who always comes through when there's a crisis. I know a lot of people, I used to work in the arts a lot, and I know a lot of people who claim that they do their best work in crisis, or they do their best work at the last minute. They become defined by solving that problem. Sometimes they give us a rhythm or a sense of purpose. Like, this is why I'm needed. This is what I have to do. And when we start to think about letting go of those problems, it feels like letting go of a structure almost in our life. It feels like almost letting go of a version of ourselves. Sometimes we don't want solutions. We just want a pattern that we can maintain. If we go back to that research that says that maintaining those default states requires less mental effort, and it takes less of the psychological effort, it creates less of a threat than change, right? Which is change is the alternate to living in the problem that we're in. What we do is we find problems that we can manage, not solve. There's a very different distinction between solving a problem and managing a problem. How many problems do you have in your life right now that are perfectly manageable? You can kind of keep them and they're fine, and they're annoying, but really at the end of the day, you haven't taken steps to solve those problems. What's happening is you're creating a status quo for yourself. You're creating a baseline. And that baseline is saying, I live in systems that are broken. But I can deal with them every single day. Not overcome them, just deal with them. I can cope with them every single day. Don't we love the phrase, it is what it is? Man, I hate that. I hate the phrase, it is what it is. And I catch myself saying it all the time. But I hate that phrase because it is what it is says, well, this is the status. Things are broken, and this is where I live now. None are manageable. Sometimes not managing a problem is a form of managing a problem too. Calling it unmanageable can be a form of management. And the thing is, when we start to get a little bit of leverage, or we start to get our arms around this, we call that progress, but it's not progress. It actually creates a cost, a psychological cost for us. The first part of it is that we're wasting our energy. So you're wasting all of this energy trying to fix something that isn't a root cause. There's that old story that everybody always tells about the doctor, and if you go to the doctor and they treat your symptoms, right, it's not actually fixing the disease, and that's a problem. But the issue for you is that you're wasting all of your energy. You're putting all of your perseverance and all of your willpower, which is a limited resource, into this bucket of trying to fix something that's not actually your problem. And then what happens over time is that compounds and you start to think that you are the issue. But worst of all, underneath all of this stuff, the real problem, whatever the real problem is, it's still growing. It's not going away. You're not fixing it. Do you have a table in your house that is wobbly? You have this table that's it just doesn't sit quite right on the floor, and it's not that the floor is uneven, it's just there's something that's not quite right about the table. And so what do? You take that piece of cardboard or that penny or whatever it is, you take that piece of cardboard and you shove it under the foot that's not even, and then the table is even, right? And that's great until the cardboard wears out or you know, it gets pulled out by a kid or something else happens. And now the next thing you know, you've got a wobbly table again, right? And then you slide another piece of cardboard and another piece of cardboard, maybe a coaster under it, and you get really good at managing the wobble. But you don't fix the table. And eventually, no matter how many times you put something under that leg, your table is going to tip. Because the leg, the problem, not the surface that it's sitting on. I read something from a psychologist named Robert Yerkes today, and he has something that he calls optimal anxiety. And I hear a lot of high performers talk about optimal anxiety. The idea is that there's this kind of sweet spot where there's just enough stress, just enough pressure to actually improve performance. But when you're staying attached to problems that are familiar, you're not actually entering into that productive discomfort. Because when you're staying attached to a problem that is a status quo, you're actually building a kind of comfort. Now, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel annoying. You're going to be a little bit irritated by the problem. But have you ever thought the phrase, better the problem that I know than the problem that I don't? You're creating a psychologically safe place for yourself. In Maslow's, if you remember back to Maslow's hierarchy, right, of all of the things that a person needs, feelings of safety are the second thing up on that pyramid. Right above things like food, shelter, our physical needs, the next thing is feeling of safety. And that is a super powerful force that we do not remember to take into account. Our attachment to familiar problems is our brain trying to keep us in that safe zone. I'll take this to myself. I'm going to take this to a really personal place. For a long time, and you guys know I'm a content creator. I'm somebody who puts stuff out on Instagram and YouTube and all of the different things, and as well as on Twitch. And for a long time, I felt like I had a visibility problem because I just wasn't getting any leverage. And I was thinking, if I could just get in front of more people, then I might be able to land more offers. Not that business was bad, but, I wanted to grow it. And so I thought, it's a marketing problem. I got to come out with more marketing. I've got to come up with better strategies and better ads, and things have to be slicker, and my copy's got to be better. But what I found out was that my problem was not really marketing in the first place. I was in a conversation with Erwin McManus, who I consider to be one of my coaches in the arena community, and I had asked him a question. The question I asked him was, "Hey, how do I know if the problem here is that I've got a bad message or that I've got a bad method of delivery for that message?" And he said to me, "Have you stopped to consider that maybe your message isn't bad and maybe your method of delivery isn't bad, but you haven't found the right audience for it yet?" And I started to think about that, and what I started to realize is that the problem I was having was a resonance problem. Because I have a tendency to speak like a strategist, like somebody who knows how the map goes and how you can get. I'm going to give you. In fact, today I'm going to give you a 4-step process, right? And I can give you all of these processes for moving to whatever the next step of your life is. It's something I do very well. It's something I love to do. But if that doesn't resonate with you, if I'm just speaking like a strategist and what you really need is a window into yourself, if I'm just telling you about stories like this, but you're not finding yourself in those stories, then we're not going to make the connection that we need to make for me to be able to help you or for you to see that you need the help that I can provide for you. So the shift that I needed wasn't in marketing at all. It was just about how I told my story. And when I started to realize this, all of a sudden things started to change. And I have, as you may know, I have a couple of newsletters that I write. I have a Substack newsletter that you can check out right there, which is my weekly newsletter. And it's just one way every week that you can get a little closer to your own personal greatness. It's free. You should check it out. It's amazing, if I do say so myself. But when I was writing that at the first, I would get a lot of comments on it that would say things like, "Oh, that's a really good idea," or "Oh, that's an interesting point." But when I started to change the language that I was using and started trying to help people find themselves in the stories that I was telling, I started to get comments that said things like, "Hey, this came at exactly the right time." And you know what? You said something I've been trying to say, but I just didn't know how. I didn't have the words for it. And those changes have transferred into changes in my business and my life. I want to let you off the hook a little bit. You know, I don't want to let you off the hook a whole lot, but I do want to let you off the hook a little bit here because comfort with the wrong problem doesn't mean that you don't want to change. This is a story, again, that I tell myself a lot. Hey, why don't you want to change? Well, it's not that I don't want to change. It just means that you've adapted to the pain of where you're at. Have you ever had chronic pain before in your life? Have you gotten to the point where it's not that the pain went away, but that you just realized that it was now it was a part of your life? When we adapt to the pain like that, sometimes we stop trying to solve the thing that's creating the pain in the first place. But if you're willing to name what is actually off in your life, then you can stop treating those symptoms, right? You stop treating the pain, stop taking the aspirin, stop putting ice on it, and you can start moving forward towards a cure for what's going wrong. And we want to solve everything through effort. We want to just work a little harder. We want to stay a little bit later. We want to, write one more paragraph before we quit. We want to just clean, one more room of the house a little bit better. We want to do just a little bit better. It's all about doing just a little bit better. But sometimes what happens when effort isn't enough? Because sometimes effort is not enough. What happens when you realize that the problem is exactly what we've been talking about, that you're attached to your problems? You gotta start asking yourself a different set of questions when you come to that place, right? Because what happens is in your brain, if we go back to the neurology stuff that we were talking about before, when you image your brain, it shows that when you break away from default patterns, in order to break away from default patterns, you have to have certain very specific neural circuits in what's called your prefrontal cortex, because you have to literally override your kind of more primitive brain, as they call it, the more primitive brain's preference for the familiar. Because change is really hard work for your brain, and your brain is the hardest working thing in your body. But once you start to identify the real issue, what's happening is you're not fighting that neurology anymore. You're starting to work with it because it's established the actual problem, the actual thing that's wrong. So I'm just going to give you my 4-part process that I worked out about this. This is a 4-part kind of clarification process that I've been working on. I'm using this with some of my clients right now, and these are 4 steps that I use to help people stop solving the problem backwards, right? So the first thing is, obviously, you have to identify the real issue. You have to make the shift from the surface symptoms to the root motivations. So some of the questions that I would have you ask yourself are, what are you doing that no longer fits you? What's going on in your life or in your workplace, in your career, or in your habits, in your disciplines? What are you doing that no longer fits you? When's the last time you took an inventory of all of the things that you're doing throughout your life? And you started to go, well, that one really doesn't serve a purpose anymore. Or that one doesn't really fit anymore. Or that's a good one, but it's not really driving me towards the person that I want to become. So that's the first step. You gotta figure out what you're doing that no longer fits you. And then you have to figure out, and this is maybe the hardest part of the whole thing. It's what belief is keeping you attached to this problem. Why do you want to keep that problem around? Right? If you've got I've had situations at work where I had a coworker that I just didn't get along with. And instead of going and addressing that with that coworker, I would just kind of complain about it. I would complain about it to other people. What do? We find other people who feel the same way about that person, and then we go to them and we want to complain about them, and we want to just have these little situations and these meetings after the meetings where all we're going to do is talk about how much we don't like this person. But what? Why am I doing that? I could very easily just go to this person and say, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking. Where are you coming from? Could we figure this out? Could we talk this out?" What belief is keeping me attached to that problem? Is it the belief that maybe I'm wrong about that person? Maybe I've misunderstood them? Is the belief that maybe that person is showing me up in some way? And so I have to make them into an enemy because if I made them into a friend, I would be defeating my own progress. What is it? This is where you got to get humble. You got to get real with yourself because if you can't be real with yourself, then there's just no way for you to make progress on any problem. And then the third question that I like to ask here when you're identifying the real issue is, if this problem disappeared, then what would you have to confront instead? Because a lot of times what happens is we're keeping the familiar problem in place because the unfamiliar problem is way scarier. So I know friends who have been wanting to launch something, wanting to launch a business or wanting to launch a product, and they keep in this cycle of, okay, I'm preparing, I'm getting ready. And it looks like perfectionism. It looks like, oh, you're never going to have that ready. Or sometimes it looks like busyness. But a lot of times what it really is, it's that they know that when they step out of that preparation moment and into that publication moment, they're going to be faced with what people think about it. I'm doing a Q&A. I'm hosting a Q&A session for an independent film that some friends of mine shot tomorrow night. And one of the things, I talked to the filmmaker, and one of the things they said to me was, it's scary to like make a thing and put it out in front of people. And I know that. I've been working on a book for 2 years. One of the reasons that I'm hesitant to put it out is because it's scary. Once I've released it, it's out there, and I'm going to know what people think about it, whether that's good, whether that's bad. No matter what it is, I'm going to have to deal with it. It's the whole don't read the comments thing, but I always read the comments. I think most of us do. So when you're identifying the real problem, ask yourself, what would I have to confront if this problem disappeared? If the book was done and out, then what would I be confronting? What would I be facing? Because when I start working on that fear over the value of my own work, and when I start facing that fear of failure and start to put that into a category where I recognize that failure is a path to success, then I can start to build a system to solve the problem that's actually happening. But as long as I keep hiding behind it's not ready, it's not ready, it's not ready, it's not ready, I'm just keeping a familiar problem the problem. And I'm not making any progress whatsoever. Some problems like this stick around because they serve us, right? They protect us from whatever that next level of responsibility is or whatever that next level of risk is. And we choose the familiar difficulty over the unknown opportunity because the uncertainty is way more threatening to our psychology. So the first thing that I recommend you do is ask yourself those questions. Try and identify what the real issue is. And then the second thing is try and figure out what solved looks like, right? This is a big thing. If you don't define what a win looks like in your life, then you're just going to keep fighting battles until you die. You'll just keep fighting battles that you're not actually intended to win. I talked, I want to say last week or the week before, about balance, this idea behind balance. Oh, I want more balance in my work and my life. But maybe it's not that, right? Maybe it's I want to end my workday with energy left for my family. Or I want to leave work feeling proud of what I did today, not guilty about what I didn't accomplish. So define the goal more specifically. And don't just keep feeding into the system that feeds the same problem. So first, identify the real issue. Second, define what a win looks like, what a solved looks like. And then three, the hard part. You have to explore and test different solutions. You have to approach it like a scientist. I mean, the business that I was talking about before, when I had to change the way that I approached my potential clients, that didn't change overnight. I started by changing the way that I do these live streams a little bit. I started by listening to the language that people were giving me when I said, hey, what are you dealing with in your life? And starting to use that language instead of just using the language for my frameworks. And that was when I started doing that, when I started saying, hey, I'm hearing you say that you're stuck. I'm hearing you say that you're working really, really hard and you're not getting anywhere. And I stopped saying, hey, you don't have any structures to create momentum in your life. When I stopped doing that and started identifying with the language that they started using, that's when people started responding. Oh, yeah, that's what I was feeling. That's exactly what I was feeling. And that's the difference between solving for noise and solving for an actual problem that exists. So the third step is you have to explore and you have to test solutions. And when things don't work, then you iterate a little bit. You change a little bit. You move that. And there are ways to do that. And those are things that, that we can work on and that we'll work on in other streams. But that's the idea, is start to explore what works, what doesn't work, know what works, what doesn't work. And that leads into the fourth step, which is you've got to activate, right? You've got to do something, and then you have to adjust. And when I say do something, I hope you know me. If you're new, first of all, what I don't mean is don't jump right to execution of gigantic things. Don't jump right to the place where you're saying, oh, I'm gonna make a step today that's going to change my life, that's going to change everything about my life. Don't jump off a cliff. That's not necessary. Start with one little thing, just one little thing that you can do. Whether it's maybe you go to the gym today for 5 minutes. That's in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. Maybe you make the bed today. I've talked about that, right? I'm going to be more disciplined. I'm going to make my bed today. Maybe you're going to find 3 people and compliment them today. Maybe you're going to find 5 things that you're grateful for today. Those things that move you towards positivity. Those things that move you towards gratitude. Just one small thing. And then watch and document what changes. And the document part is so important. And I'm not saying you don't have to buy a journal. I'm not saying that you've got to go out there and become the next great researcher or anything like that. What I'm saying is find a way to keep track of whether it's working or not. And then if it's not working, then adjust it. And if it is working, make it better. Make it just a little bit better. Instead of 10 push-ups, do 11 push-ups. Instead of 1 mile, run 1 1/10 of a mile, right? Just one little bit better every single time. And just keep repeating that. This is what I call disciplines. These are the things that we repeat, the things that we do every day that bring us closer to the people that we're designed to be. Because real change does happen in leaps. It does happen in gigantic leaps, but you have to be prepared to take those leaps. And the way that you become prepared to take the leaps is by building daily disciplines of activation and adjust. So let me go over the 4 steps again. Identify the real issue. Ask yourself those 3 questions. Define what solved looks like. Explore and test your solutions, and then activate and adjust as you go. Now, I want you to sit with these questions. Here is the first one. So if you're watching in replay, give it a pause if you need to. If you're watching live, we're just going to take a second. Oh, let me catch up with it. I got chat here. It's like buying items. Don't make buying purchases without doing the numbers and asking, can I afford this? What are the risks? Do I need this item? That's it. So it's all resource allocation. When you're making purchases, there's a sense of, do I have the resources or not? When you are creating habits in your life, or when you're making changes in your life, the first question you have to ask is, do I have the resources available? Now, here's where I see it a little bit differently. I would say, do it when you don't have the resources available, but do it when it's just above your reach. Just every day, reach to extend your ceiling just a little bit. Because if every day you reach to extend your ceiling just a little bit, eventually your ceiling is going to be way higher than if you reach for the stars and keep falling down. Just a little bit higher every day. Don't shoot for the same level. That's that familiarity. That's that status quo. Reach a little bit higher every single day and see how high you can get. So here's some questions that I want you to sit with. The first thing is this. What problem have you been solving out of habit? What problem do you have in your life that is just a habitual problem? And then the second question for you that I have for you is there a problem in your life that you kind of know is there in the background, but you're not confronting it? Because you know that if you confronted it, you would have to confront whatever the next level of responsibility is. What is that problem that you are carrying instead of facing? And then look at your calendar. I always tell you to look at your calendar. Calendar is really important to me. Look at your calendar. What discomforts have you built into your calendar? And not discomforts that make you stronger, not going to the gym, not having a hard conversation, but what discomforts have you built into your calendar that you don't need anymore? I want you to answer those questions for yourself this week. Because if we go back to our table, our wobbly table, I want you to stop shoving napkins under the leg of your table. I want you to fix it. I want you to turn it over. It's going to be hard. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be a nuisance. You're going to have to find the screwdriver wherever it is. And I want you to fix the leg. Because we talked about all the neuroscience. It's very, very clear. Your brain wants to stick with the familiar, but your growth is going to require you to override that default. And the good news is that once you identify that problem, then your psychology will start to work with you. Solve it. If you don't know what your purpose is, if you don't know what your mission is, if you don't know what it is that you're driving towards, then that is the first problem that you need to solve. And I should have said that at the beginning. I could have made this very, very easy for you, but then you wouldn't have stuck around. So if the problem that you need to solve is that you don't know where you're going, then let me suggest that you need some additional help for that. And that is where I am glad to help you. That's what I do as a coach. There are other people that can help you as well. We're not talking about therapy. We're not talking about solving your past like we talked about last week. We're talking about solving the problems that are in front of you that are keeping you from moving forward. So I would suggest that you work with somebody, whether it's me, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a whether it's somebody at work who is more experienced than you, somebody. But if it is me, then by all means, please just reach out to me and we'll talk about how we can make that happen. But the big thing that I want you to come out of today knowing is that you're not broken. You just, if you're stuck, if you're feeling motionless, if you're feeling caught in the place where you're at, it's not because you're broken. It's because you're attached to a problem that is protecting you. And I want you to have the courage to name that and to move on. Because there are bigger and better and greater things that are waiting for you at the other side of whatever is comfortable and familiar today. And I believe that you were meant to get to those things. But you cannot do it if all you're doing is managing problems. You have to have the courage to solve them. And so that is my challenge to you. What about feeling damaged? That's a great question. What about feeling damaged? We all feel damaged. In fact, we all are damaged, right? It's funny. I was tossing this up, kitty cat. I was tossing this up this week as far as trying to decide. I had two kind of topics that I was going back and forth between. And there's this one, which is, why is everybody solving the wrong problems all the time? And then the other one was this. And I'll spoil it for you a little bit because I'm probably going to get into it in a future session. But the problem is this. We live in a world that tells us all the time about how broken everybody is. We're broken. You're broken. You've got trauma. You've got things from your past. Your parents did this. Your partners did that. Whatever, right? We're told that we're broken, and that is absolutely 100% true. I believe that the whole universe is a big broken mess in some ways. But here is the thing. You are broken. You must not mistake that for being fragile. Because you are not fragile. In fact, you are not designed as a fragile creature. There are levels and levels of redundancies and resiliencies that are built into your brain and into your body. And what we need to understand is that brokenness is a reality, but it's not a destiny. It's a place where we start, but it's not a place where we have to end. And believing that and seeing that the end that we are actually designed as a species for is not brokenness, but wholeness. That's the beginning of that process. It's subjective. Everybody has different definitions of damage. Yeah, it's true. Everybody does, and that's part of the problem. When everybody has a different definition of a word, then there is no definition of the word, right? Because when everybody can be right, then no one can be wrong, right? And that's the issue. So I don't know what your definition of damaged is. I don't know what your definition of brokenness is, but I do know that everyone everywhere believes that they're broken at some level. I've never met anybody in my life who didn't believe that. And there are probably some people who are like scary, scary people who don't believe that. But I really haven't met very many people in my life who believe that they're not broken. This is one of the reasons that I have some problems in the church sometimes, because you go to a lot of churches and they'll do these whole long series on brokenness and how we're all broken, and they want to talk to people about how they should feel bad about this and they should feel bad about that. And I think the point that they miss is that people who are sitting there, they don't need to be told to feel bad about stuff because they already do feel bad about stuff. And some of them, in fact, this is going back to today's conversation, some people go to church to feel bad about stuff. Because feeling bad has become such a place of comfort for them that being reminded on a weekly basis that they are bad helps them maintain the status quo. It helps them avoid the fear of facing the fact that they could be greater, that they could overcome that. And that's what I think we need to help people towards. And it starts with the way that we talk about it. right? Yeah, I'm broken, I'm damaged, but you know what? I'm moving towards wholeness. Wholeness is possible. I am capable of achieving it. I am designed for it, right? You have to believe in the design. I think that if you see that in yourself and you push it forward, then you have the strength in yourself to get out of that hole you feel you're in. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. Let's see. I read a book long ago. I can't remember. It said change is as simple as one change of thought, one idea. The hard part is execution. Boy, that's both really good and also completely backwards in my mind. Change is as simple as thought. There's no question about it. Change is nothing but thought because all change starts with your mind. It starts with your mindset. It starts with being able to shift that. When you look at, again, and just going back to the church because I was there a second ago, when you look at the church and the story of the Christian church, you have this concept of repentance. The concept of repentance is not the concept of behavior change, by the way. It's not the word for it in the original manuscripts is mind change because the authors of the Bible understood that life change starts in the mind. It doesn't start in the behavior. The behavior follows. So if you want to change your behaviors, you change your mind first. You don't change your behaviors first. Not the way it works. That becomes untenable. But where I get a little sticky on that idea, and I know you're quoting from memory, but is when they say it's all about execution. Well, it is about execution. But if you don't have your mindset lined up in the right way first, then the execution isn't going to mean anything. It's never going to drive you towards the place that you need to be. I like that. I'm here with all my typos. Finally, it's good to see you, Head of Steel. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. I'm actually winding down, just winding down. Let's just check and see. Hang on, I want to see if there's any. Let's see if there's any questions that have come in through our Q&A line. Please wait. Please hold. Let's see. Nope, nothing on the Q&A line. Just a reminder, if you have anything ever at any point that you want to throw in anonymously, that link will pop up occasionally, and you can always put that in. So any other questions in chat? Anything that this sparks in your mind or anything that this brings up for you that you're thinking, oh, I need to express this. I need to say this. Anything in particular? What do you guys got? Hit me with it. Hit me with your best shot. If not, if nobody's got anything, then I'll go ahead and close out for the day. But let me end, as I always end, with a reminder to you that no matter what you believe about yourself, there is no denying that you have the potential for great things. There is greatness within you, and that greatness may be as small as kindness. It may seem as small as kindness. It may be as great as worldwide impact. But impact is exactly what greatness is all about. And you have the ability to impact your world, whether it's very, very close to home, whether it's just in your family, whether it's in your neighborhood, whether it's in your city, wherever it is, you have the ability to create an impact. And I want you to see that, and I want you to recognize it. Because if you believe that about yourself, it will change everything about the way that you treat yourself, about the way that you treat others, and about the direction that you will move in your life. The belief that you have the ability to change the world in a positive way will make you ready to change the world in a positive way. That's what I have. I had some thoughts in today's Substack post, thoughts in progress. Excellent. I always love to hear thoughts on the Substack post. By the way, guys, here. Don't forget to subscribe to the Substack. It is free, completely free. I write a second Substack that's it's called Becoming Daily, and that is a faith-based Substack. So that's where I take the same kind of principles that we talk about here every week, and I apply those to spiritual principles and spiritual growth. So if you're interested in that, let me know as well. I would love to have you that. Thank you, Kat. I appreciate you being here today. I appreciate all of you being here today, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Until next time comes, thanks again. My name is Andrew Burkham, and I am the founder and CEO of the Idea Training Academy. Look us up at ideatrainingacademy.com. Check me out on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, at Andrew Burkham, just like my name. Check me out on Substack, and keep your eyes peeled here to Twitch. Until the next time I see you, my friends, you know how to do it. Now go be great.